Welcome. This is Chipacon. I apologize. I got gremlins tonight. How very Christmassy. Of course, gremlins never were Christmassy, but until the movie. This is Chipacon, and this is the Otherworldly show, keeping changing times, changing world's topics going from November to the next November when the conference comes back. And we are, if it's called supernatural, paranormal, metaphysical, occult, we'll figure it's time to bring it out in the light and talk about it. Tonight, what we're doing is folklore. And we are talking about the monsters of Christmas because today is the December 8th. On the 5th was Krampus night, or St. Nicholas Eve. And coming up, we have the Yule Lads will be coming in, and there are many, many things, the Nisse and the Tomten and the, there are many theoretically scary people, scary monsters that are associated with Yule, and we're going to be talking about some of them. Very interested in all kinds of things of holiday and folklore, so we're going to be talking about that. I think if I can do it, I'm going to share my screen. Let me call up the okay, where is it?
Bottom of your screen to the right of chat.
Window. We're going to have, I have some pictures that I managed to collect to share with people because there are just so many beautiful ones. I'll admit, I've gotten kind of excited by the folklore Facebook group I discovered recently, and I want to share some of the lovely images. I'm going to be honest, I took these off the internet. If they are restricted and they belong to somebody else, I do apologize terribly. I don't intend to do anything that is
illegal, immoral, or fattening.
Where is my, take away the notes. Come on, show me the pictures I want. There. Is that the one I'm looking for?
Holiday Monsters images?
You are. Holiday Monsters images is the ones I'm looking for. There we go.
Well, third column, most part way down.
There we go. There we go. I'm beginning to see them. Now, come and load up. Now, can you guys see that yet?
Yes, we can.
There, let me get that as big as possible. Okay, there we have the and remember I mentioned the Yule Lads. Associated with the Yule Lads is the Yule Cat, and I do not pronounce many things properly, so let's just accept that and move on.
Take that on
Jólakötturinn.
faith.
Anybody know how to pronounce that? It basically means the Yule Cat. The Yule Cat is Gria's cat, who is a giant cat that goes out and eats anyone who isn't wearing at least one new piece of clothing on Christmas Eve. Your new piece of clothing is an indication that you've been good and you've gotten your work done before Christmas. And if you haven't, and if nobody cares enough about you to give you to get you a new piece of clothing before Christmas Eve, then you're in deep trouble. Person. Here's another image of the Yule Cat, who in this case has a candle on it. And you can see this poor person is being picked up and eaten.
Okay, this is the clothes they got. So do I have to wear the underwear or the sweater or whatever? Otherwise, I'm going to open up Amazon.
Just wear something new. I'm particularly fond of this one. This one is often a gift that says, dude, let me in, I'm a fairy. That's that.
We know about
that
fairies.
is a version. Now this is Frau Perchta. We'll talk about her a little bit later. She is one of the many people who lead the wild hunt. And there's Gria. Gria also, beside the Yule Cat, she eats bad children all year long. But
good for her.
But she specifically is a eater of naughty children. Apparently, I think it was 1794, the King of Denmark said, "Stop scaring your children with goblins." and at that point, they started paying more attention to the Yule Lads. But in many things, they did indeed scare their children. Somebody would come and visit, and as you can see, this is a disguised human, but they have gifts for him as naughty children. This is now where's my label? That's a Jólakötturinn, which is a Finnish version of it, and you can see there's a skull, but you can see there's a beard underneath there. So again, it's somebody who's dressed up. Here's more. They're very, very clearly dressed up. A version of this is Jólakötturinn. There's a variety of house elf. They carry a lamp and apparently every other thing. with them. You'd think if they lived in the house, they wouldn't need to carry anything. This is a lovely little picture. Someone has a modern picture of the Mari Lwyd and the Krampus. The Mari Lwyd is a Welsh thing where they take a couple guys under a sheet with a horse's skull, which they decorate to pieces, and they go around from house to house, and they have rhyme making contests. And Krampus, of course, is the associate of Sinterklaas who takes away the naughty children. And both of them are becoming more popular here than Santa was. Here we have a Krampus. This particular one is a wonderful example of that's somebody carved that. They make these masks and they're worth thousands of dollars, and they have museums with these beautiful masks that they have carved. And if you go to YouTube, you can see them carving out these beautiful things and then putting on horns, and then they make fur outfits. And they go to big parades and terrify the small children, as is an appropriate thing to do for Christmas. I love this. Here we have Krampuses in the wild. I don't know where this is. I got this one from a friend of mine who and she can't find the attribution. We're looking around to see if we can find somebody. Again, these are all hand-carved masks that they wear along with fur outfits. Krampus was very big about a century ago, and some of the images are female. One of the things that is very distinctively Krampus is they all had a long tongue. If you ever had goats, you would know that is just a thing that goats, they have this long tongue that sticks out, especially when they're smelling the right pheromones. And of course, during the postcard season, they liked they had females who were collecting naughty men as well as going after the naughty boys. Here's a beautiful Mari Lwyd. Now, if you look at, you can see the Welsh spelling of Mari Lwyd. I believe I'm actually pronouncing that one correctly. Here's a photograph of a Mari Lwyd, where you take the ghost, you take the skull, and you decorate the heck out of it. Often bells are on it, and here's a couple of them. See how they're decorated, and they put on jewels and they put on ribbons. And many of the ones I've seen have kind of a wreath-like crown, solar coronet coming out behind them. They're very decorative. And I just had to include this because My Little Ponies, you know, it's like, now here we are to the little Nisse, which is, Nisse is the Scandinavian generic term for the house whites that you give some porridge at Christmas. And then here's this one is labeled Tomten, which is more specifically Danish, I think. Here is a selection of the Yule Lads, and this is a sculpture that is out in Reykjavik right now, that they just put up of the Yule Cat to come out and get you. So let us continue terrifying our little children to behaving, if we can, because why not? Let's see.
Well, why not? It's worked for centuries, hasn't it?
Well, you know, the boogeyman, right? And so we are, so that
All right.
said, there are so many versions of monsters. Perhaps I could start with just running through. Once they had said that they were going to don't terrify your children anymore, they switched over to the Yule Lads. Now the Yule Lads have been cleaned up a lot since the since they were first developed or brought out. When they started out doing the Yule Lads, they began telling the saying, well, basically they started cleaning them up like they did in almost everything in the Victorian era, and they're going to make them sweeter, make the fairies smaller and whatever. Then in 52, no, it wasn't that, it was in 1932, there was a poem called Jólakötturinn, or Christmas is Coming, which is like Clement Moore, who taught us the names of the reindeer and they stuck. This guy, there had been a great variety. Gria had a lot of children, and they all went around and pestered people around Christmas time. One of the cool things I think about the Yule Lads is that they come in one at a time, starting around the 12th, about the time of the Santa Lucia feast. And one comes in each day, and then after Christmas, one leaves each day. So at Christmas time, you have all 13 of them hanging around, and then they gradually go away again. Which
so it's sort of like the 12 Lads of Christmas.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of neat. And so we have this just to quickly run through them. The first one is sheepcoat clod. I'm not going to do the Icelandic pronunciation. I know we'll slaughter them. So I'm using the translations. And he has peg legs, so he can't get around very far, but he likes to sneak in and suckle from your ewes. The next one is Gully Gawk, who hides in gullies, and then he comes out and he slurps the foam off of the buckets of milk. The next one is Shorty, or Stubby, and he steals your he'll go and snitch something from the food pans. Then there's the spoon licker, and the 16th is the pot licker or pot scraper, and he will go into any pans that haven't been washed and he'll lick them clean, which I don't think sounds that good unless, of course, you know that it's going to be gross. He followed. Then there is bowl licker. He steals the bowls from under the beds. Now this is a little odd for us, but apparently people had their own bowl and it had a lid on it, and you put your personal portion in, and I guess you tuck it in under your bed.
You're not talking about a chamber pot, are you?
No, it wasn't a chamber pot. It was simply your personal bowl, which you would keep in by your bed, and that was, and he would steal your bowl and steal your portion of the food. And could be that it was a agricultural thing, and the lady of the house would simply portion everybody out, and so you get and depending on what time you came in for your chores, your stuff was still there. But then on the 18th, door slammer comes, which made me posit that perhaps these were all things that were made up in as things that parents wanted to tell their kids not to do. The 19th, skyr gobbler comes in. Skyr is Icelandic yogurt, which is delicious, and is currently available here, which I found. I learned to.
Yeah, the Siggy's branding.
Yeah.
Now sausage.
The local Stop and Shop sometimes has it.
Segments carry it too.
Piper hangs around in the rafters and he steals the sausages. Window peeper is always looking in the windows, which is creepy. Door sniffer, he likes to go after the baked goods, especially, and they say, especially the Laufabrot, the Laufa bread, but that's fried. So, so much for baked goods. I don't know. You're getting increasingly into, don't do this mode. And then the 23rd is Meat Hook Lad, and he will snatch the meat right up, especially the smoked lamb. And the last one coming on Christmas Eve is Candle Beggar, and he would follow children around and steal their candles because they were made from tallow, and he would eat them. And then again, they would leave afterwards as they had come one day at a time. But the first I ever heard of them, the thing that I liked best was in Iceland, apparently the kids will put their shoes on the windowsill. And if you're good, you might get a little treat. And we're talking little treats, like a orange or a piece of fruit or just a cookie or something. But if you're not good, no, you don't get coal or something innocent like that. No, you get a rotten potato. And if you have never smelled a rotten potato, you are unaware of just how little you want that inside your shoe. So this is
let alone in your house.
Yeah, but it's like I'm just seeing the mothers saying, "Oh, here's a rotten. I'm going to set that one aside in case anybody misbehaves." But even at the most benevolent, in Holland, in the Netherlands, they'd have somebody dress up as Saint Nicholas, who often came with Zwart Piet behind. And we're not going to get into the political correctness of Zwart Piet, but Santa almost always comes with somebody who is the punishing aspect of Santa. So, but this would be somebody who dressed up as Saint Nicholas, and he would come in, and the kids would line up, and what he would do would be to tell the kids what they had done wrong sometime during the previous year. And can you imagine when you thought you'd gotten away with something that your parents didn't know about it? In comes St. Nicholas, and he's like, yes, we do know about this. And his helper, whether it is Krampus or Black Peter or whatever, threatens to whack you, and apparently occasionally sometimes did. And then he would make his magical escape by tossing pepper nuts on the floor, which you can, in a Dutch family, you can eat off the floor. In my house, you can walk on the floor. That's probably safe to do that, but I'm not. But the kids would go running after the cookies, and he would disappear at that point, and nobody would see him go. But frankly, the having your secrets told in public strikes me as a equally
Okay, looks like she's having issues with her connection.
have that to do. But I will say one thing about black peat, and a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that the Netherlands were for a couple hundred years under the control of Spain. It was the Habsburg Spain, and therefore the bad guy was a Moor. The bad guy was dressed in Spanish clothing, and also we're dealing with, and we get this again in Belsnickel, who was an American version. Gee, I thought I had a picture of Belsnickel, who dressed in rags and darkened their face with soot or burnt what's
Cork.
it called?
Cork.
In the old days, if you burn cork and you rub it on your face, you get a nice black face, and you are disguised. It's a real cheap disguise in the old days. So that's not necessarily. Now with the way they felt about the Moors and the Spanish, that there may very well be a derogatory aspect in the Dutch, but from the mid 1600s, about 1550s to 1700s, they were that. So they didn't like and these days they are switching him over to sooty peat, because sooty peat is not it's not racial. So
Right.
But he's like Pierre Fouettard, who is another one of the companions. Pierre Fouettard goes back to the 11th century. St. Nicholas found, there was this butcher, Pierre Fouettard, who had 3 boys came to his shop to buy meat, and he turned them into meat. He chopped them up and was selling them. And St. Nicholas came and restored the boys to life, and then took Pierre Fouettard as a prisoner. Often his accompaniment often has clanky chains, because he is a captured demon or a captured person who is now his. He's also known as Schmutzy, Rubles, Hansrap, Little Elzebub, Klausenbauf, Belsnickel, the Grimm brothers associated with kobolds, but if you're going to be disguising yourself and running off to do what we call waning, which is causing trouble, burnt cork and rags are cheap. So those are things that you can. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the Mari Lwyd, the zombie horse, because, well, okay, I'm going back to a horse's skull. When the horse has died and you have eaten the horse or turned it into glue or whatever you're going to do, you've got a skull that you can't do much with. Now, this was South Wales, Glamorgan and Gwent, I think, but the cool thing about that is, the Welsh are musical people. They got the people underneath the sheet, and sometimes they, depending on the ingenuity of the people involved, the people underneath they've got a hinge on the lower jaw, making it open and shut. And what they're doing is they're going house to house, and then they have a improv contest, and they basically will sing a verse at you, and you have to give us something to eat. You don't want something sweet. It goes back and forth till somebody can't keep up. And at that point, either they have to go on to the next house, or they have to let them in and give them something to eat. But basically, as they describe it, the Mari Lwyd comes and they're allowed to come in and eat all of your food and drink your beer. But of course, this is what they have out for you, which is not significantly different from one of the versions of okay, the wild hunt. This is where we get the Odin is Santa background, and the like, don't take Odin out of out of Yule, which you may have heard. The Odin is one of the many people who led the wild hunt, and there were a lot of different ones. Basically, people see ghosts, and this time of year you may or may not see spirits or hear the wind in the trees or whatever, but this is the time when the veil is thin, either between Samhain and Imbolc, or Yule and the first and the last day of Christmas, or St. Martin's, which is November 11th, to Candlemas. This is the period when the veil is thin and the spirits get to come around. And one of the interpretations of the wild hunt is someone is out there collecting the souls of everyone who died. Another interpretation is that they're chasing down bad guys. One of the interpretations is Frau Perchta, who gets the souls of all the unbaptized children, and the unbaptized children are who are in the wild hunt. And then there's sometimes it's the devil, sometimes it's Arun, I think it is, who is the lord of the underworld. Other people who are said to run the wild hunt are everyone from King Arthur to Francis Drake, Saint Guthlac, Herod the Wake. I could go on. I did a whole workshop on the wild hunt, which is it's its own thing. It's huge. But there's one of the versions of the wild hunt is the benevolent hunt, and in Italy and that area, Habondia, the goddess of abundance, would travel through the night during this time of year. And if you had no covers, if you left out food for them, if you'd left the top off of whatever that usually left a top on, if you set out pitchers of beer, your household would be blessed with abundance. You leave offerings. This is kind of the more Mediterranean version of leaving the bowl of porridge for the Yule Nisse. But this goes right back to Habondia. I mean, they're right up there saying she's a goddess and she is blessing your house with abundance. And this is a way of getting abundance. There's a Slavic being who is essentially the god of fertility and spring, and he travels around. Although often these days that is seen as something that happens in Lent, leading up to Easter. And he also has these costumed, scary masked guys that travel around, which is kind of neat. And I have the notes in here. They're just so many. They're very cool. Oh yeah, Yarnik or Yarolo, and he was called, he's a god of vegetation, and he's called the wolf herder. Now, many versions of the wild hunt have dogs, and they will. This is the kind that chase down evildoers. One of the things that you see in the wild, okay, let's just face it, as with so many of the things we discuss in Changing Times, Changing Worlds, you have to explain what people experience. People experience psychic stuff. People see ghosts. And come around the 10th and 11th century, the church had been trying to convince people for years and years and years that there was no such thing as magic, no such thing as witches, no such thing as ghosts, except when somebody died, either they went to hell or they were waiting to be called up again at the last judgment. But they couldn't stop people from seeing ghosts because ghosts kept showing up. So since there were ghosts, they had to explain them. And so that's why they invented purgatory, because purgatory is, well, you see, these people are being kept in a kind of a limbo where they they're working off their sins. They're not bad enough to go to hell, and they're not good enough yet to be resurrected. So they're working off their sins. And there's a whole pile of stories about people who are being, who they see in these wild, now they're these wild hunt parades, these processions of people who are going across the and people will see their relatives, and their relatives will say to them, I stole that mill from our neighbor, could you please give it back to him? That's a specific example where the son said, hey, that was your sin, not mine, and why should I suffer from what you did? And didn't give it back. Like, go ahead, go to hell, you did the bad thing. But other people who had, very popular was you were stuck in the wild hunt if you hunted and run down your peasants' crops, and so now you have to pay for your love of hunting, or hunting on a Sabbath. Oh gee, that's horrible. And so that a lot of they explained these and gave it a moral character that justified the fact that people were actually seeing them. And if you see the wild hunt, you might be forced to join it, which is not good. At very least, it's exhausting, and you could not come back. Very similar to seeing a fairy procession. So that is another, and in fairy processions, we also often see people who have died and have been stolen by the fairies. So there's this similarity that you can see to those things and wonder. But one of the things that you do if you want to avoid being taken by the wild hunt is like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't look at them. Throw yourself on the ground. Theoretically, they run 3 feet above the ground, and if you throw yourself on the ground, they can't trample you because their horses' hoofs won't hit that. Or you can throw a piece of steel down, which they can't cross, in between you and them, or throw down a piece of bread, which sounds like an offering to me. But frankly, let me know if you can always put a message in Facebook or on the Changing Times group if you want to hear the full the full excitement of the wild hunt. But getting back to Christmas, there are just so many. The benevolent troop is very clearly a carryover from pre-Christian times, where you are putting out offerings and you are you're getting blessings in return, as we see with the Nisse and the Tomte, where you give a bowl of porridge once a year. Now, my experience with housewives, and the Tomte and the Nisse and the various other things they call them, which I have a list of somewhere. With personal modern experience, in 21st century experience, you develop your relationship with your housewife, your house spirit. The English call them hobgoblins or hobs, and you can put out a offering of milk or whatever. Some of them, most of them like milk, but that may be because we used to be agricultural and that was something that you could offer. the Irish ones I know like spirits. they are very fond of a little nip, a wee dram. Put out what you have. You can negotiate that, and if you won't only put it out at Christmas, for goodness sakes, put it out at Christmas. If you're going to put it out once a year, some people put out something every full moon. You negotiate that with your house spirits, but whatever you do, once you have started, don't stop. If you stop, if you don't. A traditional story about one farmer decided it was really cold, so he buried the butter that he put on top of the porridge underneath so that it would melt. And the Nisse saw that he didn't get butter this year. So he got cross and he killed the guy's cow. And then he went and sullenly ate the porridge and discovered the butter at the bottom. And then he felt bad about it. So he went over to the next farm and he traded cows, the dead cow for the live cow.
Oh.
And so the fellow came out in the morning and he saw his friend's cow, and he went over to his friend's house. I got your cow, it was in my shed. And he said, yeah, I got your cow, it's dead. And which may be something that happened, and then the story of the cross Nisse was come up with as an explanation. But yeah, don't tick off if you've got somebody who's being nice to you. Now, another tradition, many of the traditions have to do with getting your work done, doing your work. The house elves, the barn elves, the various household deities, whether Habondia or Mother Hola. And by the way, next week we've got, I know his name. He's coming to talk about Mother Hola and working with Mother Hola. And so you want to, if you work with Mother Hola, she's another one that you don't get on her bad side. But she's another person who is said to lead the wild hunt sometimes. And as is Perchta, they're old household goddesses who work hard and really admire people who work hard, which comes up to the Victorian period, where the house elves are allowed to pinch the maids once for every berry or pine needle that they find after 12th night. If they haven't cleaned up all of the fallen needles, then they're allowed to go after the lazy maids. But it's kind of self-contradictory that if you are a slob and aren't doing a good job, they're going to kick over your ash bucket. They're going to spill your milk. They're going to basically make trouble. But if you're a hard worker, they will do things for you. And frankly, having personally experienced it, at our summer cabin, I went up and it was before we opened the cabin and put out the line for water. And so I was getting a bucket of water for my washing and drinking and such, because my family cabin is on Clearwater, which is the clearest lake on the eastern seaboard. It's all spring fed, which means it is freezing most of the year. It's like, it's pretty cold, but it's also clear and good to drink. So, but I was bringing up a bucket of water to use myself. And the last thing I would do was I would pour it down the toilet. And I got up one morning and it was full. And I said, yeah, I guess I might have forgotten to flush. Doesn't look like I forgot to flush. Okay. And the next morning, so I was careful the next day, and the next day it was filled. So there you go. Just as these stories tell, they do work for you. The other thing that it did was one of the screens had been blown out. That our guess was that a squirrels had come down the chimney, or maybe a raccoon or something, and it pushed out the screens to escape. The thing was that the screens were held on. Okay, if you here's the screen. here's the inside and this is the outside. The screen is held on by, it had a piece of wood nailed down holding the edge of the screen down. I was really, okay, I don't know how to do this. I'll have to tell Dad and he'll have to come up with the ladders. Because as anything, when you have a cottage on a slope down to a lake, you may be going in on the flat at the back of the cottage, but at the front it's 20 feet up in the air. So I was a little nervous about that and didn't know where the tall ladders were. And I went for a walk, it was about 2 hours, and I came back and the screens were fixed. They were all put in. Okay. I went down. I was like, okay, maybe Dad knew about this and called a handyman. And I went down and I looked in the mud below and there were no ladder marks. There were no footprints. I was like, no, this was a housewife. And since we have frequently seen him and heard him, people who don't believe in this stuff sense the presence at the cabin. So, but this is what happens when you have a good relationship with your house spirits. At Christmas time, give them their porridge. All year long, speak kindly to them, be nice to them. I believe because I've experienced it. And if you haven't experienced it, it's a lot easier to disbelieve. So there you go. But so get the house clean, keep it clean. Sorry, Mother, hold on. I'll get to it. But yeah, that kind of went off sideways a little bit. But yeah, so there are monsters, but I guess the point I was trying to get to with that was that many of them, like Mother Hola, like fairies, like your house spirits, they're not bad, they're not good. They simply have the way the things they know how they want it to be, and that's how you're going to. That's how they will. The Krampus, not to make people sad, but a lot of these things just don't seem to go back more than a couple hundred years. The Romantic period in the 18th and 19th century, when people started realizing that they were losing their heritage, people started looking into these things, and then we're having another resurgence of we've got to recreate our ancient things, and we get and so we get that many of the things that we do are us trying to recreate, but some of them are so they can be a little terrifying, and some of them are meant to scare. I personally don't think that any Santa who can't kick butt is kind of a wussy Santa. I think that Santa and his crew ought to be able to, stuff the naughty children into the sack. And I think that ability to terrify is part of what makes us Santa powerful. Who was it who has Perchta? Perchta is a witch figure, probably a version of Hola or a Bondia, but she is said to have goose feet, which is the shape of some of the Christmas cookies are shaped like goose feet because there's I really do want to. I was going to mention, well, Belsnickel is the Pennsylvania Dutch version, and he will dress in rags and furs and blacken his face, and he carries treats and a whip and bells. I'm not sure why, but they almost always seem to have bells. The best reason that we can think of is that almost all of these processions of monstrous creatures are driving away evil influences. Now here you go. we got what looks like monsters driving away the evil. It sounds odd, but that does seem to be what's going on. Just as the boogeymen are threatening to carry away the bad children. You need someone who can kick butt to get rid of bad evil, as it were. And I can see that we're getting close to the end. I really was hoping that some of the people who came would want to throw something in. I'm sorry, I have gone on and on as if I was doing a workshop, and I really wanted more.
Well, I've got a couple of things I want to chew on then, if you're opening the invitations. Two specifically. One is that, right from the beginning, is that our first Christmas card of the year was a Krampus card, a handmade one. There it is. Show it. From one of Jen's
I better
friends.
take my background off.
Yeah, you should, because it's absolutely good. It's the one we've gotten so far, and I thought it was absolutely wonderful that our first card of the year was a Krampus card, all hand cut.
Hand cut paper, and
Oh, cool.
it's really
Yeah,
lovely.
really.
Cool.
Otherwise,
My first card this year was a Krampus card.
hey, good for you.
Never had one before.
No, neither have I. And the other point is, which came up kind of sideways, which is talking about house spirits and taking care of them, and you relating your experiences with a house wight who seemed to rather like you a lot because you were nice to him.
I think it may be a
And-
topic for another weekend, another Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm going to
Actually.
toss this out for just this bit because
Yeah.
Fezzik sent me in a private message. We should investigate the presence of any house spirits here or the lack thereof, and then how to attract one. Because as the chief cook and bottle washer, floor mopper, laundry person, and everything else, boy, could I use a house spirit. And I am willing to be very nice to them.
And
So,
that is one of the traditions. If you do not feed them, they will leave. They will pack
Right.
up and leave. So you,
And
they are
being renters and not property owners.
yeah.
but that
we have
doesn't matter
not
because,
had a chance to establish relationships with them.
right. On the other hand, we've been here longer than the current owner. And I mean, if it's just a matter of feeding people, my cat should be doing all the laundry. But I would want to know what offerings to make to a household spirit who would be willing to help with housework
Well,
or anything else they thought was beneficial to me.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that the only way to attract them is to try and keep the house as well as you can. They may or may not be as interested in helping anyone who isn't isn't doing their best. I think that they may I mean, if they're living in the house with you, they're going to know whether you're doing your best or slacking off.
Right.
And again, we can cover this tomorrow with not next week with when we're talking about Mother Hola, because she is going to be somebody who does push that. And if you ask Mother Hola, she may very well assign somebody to you. But most of these the housewights, at least in the northern area, seem to be the spirit of the original person who lived there, who first. It's kind of a combination of a land spirit and a ancestor.
Okay.
However,
the guy that
We can
the
work with
original
that.
owner, yeah, the original owner of the house who built the place back in the late 20s was a local community guy and owned a gas station nearby. Everybody knew him. So maybe I'll just chase that, or maybe we'll just meditate on it and ask for inspiration.
Yeah, one of the things that if you just it is it makes sense that if they can leave, you can be left in a house without a spirit. And that doesn't sound like a healthy place to, because they're protective. One of the things that, that we do, that we know they do, is to protect. So that is a thing that they do. So.
And I try so hard to do everything I can to take care of Jen, to take care of myself, to take care of the house. And it's easy to really immediately butt up against the concept of, you think you're doing the best you can, but are you really? How can you tell? Are you sure? I mean, that's an honest question, because I keep, I've had more than one occasion in the last 5 years where I worked myself into a state of malnutrition, where I end up in the hospital, or I just wear myself completely out. So I want to think I'm doing my best, but I have to be honest and say, how much of that is my ego? I don't know. And I guess at some level, I'm looking for a impartial third-party opinion here.
Well, I'm not somebody who can be impartial, and I'm not entirely certain you want the good folk being impartial, because they don't think the way we do, and they would be impartial, but they are not necessarily well disposed for you either.
Well, I mean, it could be worse. I could be asking Kali, the Black Mother, for advice, and she would simply give me a big hug and burn away anything that's impure. And I don't know if there'd be anything left.
They do like the idea. I mean, when they're making the loud noises, when they're burning, say, pine or other various things to smudge or whatever, it's supposed to drive away evil spirits and witches, except of course witches are doing it to drive away evil spirits. It's driving away evil, but not necessarily doing the it isn't driving away witches. But once you have identified everything, let's face it, traditionally the witch, what is known as a witch in popular culture, is the person who did magic for nasty reasons. Now, if you go back to classical and other, the witch is somebody who did magic, period. But in popular culture, it's the person the cranky witch was the one that you called a witch. And if not, you called her a cunning woman. If she was nice, you called her a cunning woman or a wise woman or something like that. So a wise woman or a cunning man.
I would like to point out that when I asked it in chat, I did not intend it to become the topic of the night, because this is not on the topic.
Well, that's why I said we're going sideways, and I was prepared to raise the point, if only for a later time. But it instantly became a matter of great concern for me. So
what I tell people is, you can, if you have come, and this happens far too often in the modern world, you can move into an apartment. If it is in a neglected area, there often will not be a house spirit there. And you can invite one in. It's something like inviting in the fairies, which is not something I recommend. But
that's not something that people in this neighborhood would have ever done.
But the way to invite in a house spirit or yard spirit is to clean up the yard, clean up the house, do your very best and make it a habitable area, at which point you say, I would like someone to come here and live. You're essentially advertising for a roommate. And yes, indeed, there are two kinds. There can be the one that is attached to the building land, and there's the kind that is attached to the family. And if you move again, if you provide it, if you pack a box that is like, this is our household spirit box, and we're moving, and you invite it, if you want to come with us and we will take you with us, and you can move your house spirit with your family to your new abode. This
Okay.
is something that can be done, but
And that's incredibly relevant to us because we don't own the bloody building. We don't own the yard. We aren't allowed to park in the driveway. We can't use the back deck.
There's
This
nothing
is
for us
so
to use either.
basically, that's not holiday, but it is
That's not
maybe
holiday, no.
subject.
No,
It
I
could
know.
be a subject for another
like I said,
otherworldly.
And I would love
I
to
would
be.
like, I would love it to be too. And thank you for humoring me to ask about this because I actually did get enough out of this to start chasing the concept on my own. But I would be utterly fascinated in any otherworldly that could educate me in the practical business of attracting a roommate who will support me in my labors.
Okay, meanwhile, so let's to finish up. Are there any other questions on the monsters of the Yuletide that people might have or hoping to hear about when they tuned in? All right. Well, let's just
Yeah.
then
I just
we
wanted to
will
hear
take-
about more of them.
Okay, then I will just remind people that this will be posted on YouTube in a couple of days, and we look forward to hearing from you. I am always open to suggestions of what you'd like to hear about. We are the changing times, changing worlds, and otherworldly. If it has to do with divination or magic or complementing our alternative healing or folklore or ghosts or any supernatural being or spiritual practices, that's where we're at. We're trying to provide a forum where we can talk about this without having to feel our way through and figure out if the audience is receptive. We know you're receptive, so we can just go on from there. So tonight, thank you very much, and we'll talk about Mother Holen next week. And then is there anything else I should say before I hit stop? Please join us on Facebook groups.
I'm just going to say thank you so much because
Yes, thank you.
there was so much stuff here I did not know.
Okay.
More of it in one bucket than I've gotten in months.